Good evening, everybody. It's Mario with Motorcycle Knuckle Busters, and we're back at it again. And I've got another great guest for you. Um, we talk about some of the folks that come on here, and great accomplishments, different things they do, their place in the motorcycle world and the world in general. And this gentleman, very humble, doesn't seek the spotlight or anything like that, but he deserves it. And so we're going to give him a little bit of spotlight tonight. We're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about his life. We're going to talk about all the great things he's done. I've known him for a few years now, and I just have absolute respect for him. So without further ado, I want to introduce Rod Woodruff.
Well, geez, I'm flattered by all of that. Thank you, Mario.
Well, I figure if I'm going to flatter somebody, it should be you, right?
Well, and flattery is the wrong word to be using, right? But truthfully, I'm honored to be on your show. So thank you.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on. And for those of you that don't know, Woody is the owner and operator of the Sturgis Buffalo Chip. He's got a great team behind him, but just like George Patton or any of those great leaders, in the past, he leads. And it's without your leadership and without your stewardship, the Buffalo Chip wouldn't be the grand place that it is. But I want to talk about, everything about, talk about you, talk about the person you are. And I think a lot of people, they may know who you are, but, they don't know, a whole lot maybe about you. So I'd kind of like to start early, let's tell me about where you were born and where you were raised.
I was born in a hospital in Miller, South Dakota, which was the top floor of a two-story wooden building. My grandfather worked in the grocery store that was on the first floor, and the hospital was on the second floor. And my folks lived out on a farm that my grandparents had. Actually, my maternal grandparents had been given as a dowry for when they got married, right? And
Okay.
So we were like, I don't know, 30 miles out of town or something. And it was a long time ago. Thank you.
Yeah. So, so living, growing up like that and being kind of remote, what did you do to connect to the world? What was your means?
Oh, back then, you mean?
Yeah.
Once a week, I think, we went to town, and kind of like the cash income was, we had like a cream can and took some cream to town, sold it to the local dairy, and bought groceries and rode back home. Maybe shot a rabbit or two on the way back. My dad was a pretty good shot. And, if it was duck season or something, he might stop along the way, some stock pond that was populated with some stuff that could fly. And, what we did when we went to town was he bought comic books. And so out in the farm, it's kind of quiet out there. And so he really taught me to read at a pretty young age with those comic books. So I was a pretty big fan of Lone Ranger and, Roy Rogers, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, it was all educational, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It really is. I read comic books as a kid, and that started my love of reading and stories. And it eventually that you mature and what you start digesting becomes a little bit more complex. So, well, and it obviously did with you as well, right?
Well, somewhere along the line, I don't know where it would have fit, but it had to be in a comic book because that's the only thing we had around there to read. It wasn't like anybody was dropping the paper off every day or anything, right? And
right.
So, I was probably 4 years old, maybe 3-4 years old, and I wanted a motorcycle so badly. And the only place I could have gotten that desire was from one of those comic books, right? And I hounded my parents about it until one of those holidays or something. I got a nice little motorcycle about 4 inches long, gold wheels. The whole motorcycle was gold. You know, you could turn the handlebars and the wheels would go around, and I still have it, right? So that's my first motorcycle, but I don't remember where I got that, you know, really need for a motorcycle, but that's where it started, way back out in the country, and wasn't a motorcycle in sight. And so, you know, a few years later, when I lived in town, and fella, you know, come back from World War II and had a Indian motorcycle, you know, he was pretty close to a hero at that time.
I bet. So you still have that motorcycle?
Yeah, that's my first bike, right? So yeah, I got it in a little box in the treasure chest, right? I should get it framed and put up, but you know, wouldn't want to have it get broken or anything these days.
No, but you know what? That's something that definitely bring out and show some folks. I mean, we get a picture of that and show some people on the page. I'd love to, because wow, that's fantastic. I just absolutely love that. So, I mean, so here you are. You know, you know, you're reading comic books. You're living out on the farm. You know, you're already starting to build your love of motorcycles. And then, where did you go to school? I mean, so you were quite a ways out of town. So tell me about that.
You know, well, actually, a few miles from the house, there was a country school, a one-room schoolhouse, just kind of like, this is my Abe Lincoln story. Only we don't want to go quite that far. There were no logs in it, but you know, it was a one-room country school with maybe a dozen students and one teacher, right? So, you know, all grades studied and had classes in the same room and had the same teacher. And, you know, we sometimes we'd ride horses to school. There weren't any school buses or anything. And really, wasn't like we had cars that could get around that well either. So, you know, after a time, people were riding horses to school, had a little stable there where you could tie them up for the school hours and then ride home.
So you guys did Laura Ingalls proud, huh?
So it wasn't really any big deal. It's just what happened. And I didn't do that for a long time, and it wasn't anything exotic. It was, you know, I should remember the names, but we had two Morgans. And so, you know, here's this little twerp starting the first grade and, you know, riding a Morgan, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a big old horse right there. So, you know,
yep, I think Nelly
not the fastest horse. I mean, they can be if they want, but usually they take their time, don't they?
Yep. So anyway, then, you know, moved to the city, you know, kind of like a lot of folks probably experienced. My father came back from World War II with a little habit formed from a daily ration of rum. And so my mother got kind of tired of that, and we ended up moving to town. And so I went to school there in grade school until my father passed away, and moved to another town, did a little bit of school there. In high school, kind of had some issues and started bouncing around with relatives to stay, and eventually came back home for my senior year of high school and lived with my mother, and then started college and had a little car accident. I was a passenger in and broke a lot of things, so kind of missed that first year, and then got out of the cast, and it was time to join the military and do the military service, right? So did the military service, was an accountant actually, so I was not in combat or anything. And so got out of that and decided better go to California, because that was kind of where everything was happening, right? So
Sure.
went to Orange, and then went to, LA, and then Redwood City up in San Francisco, hung out there. Got to hang out at the Fillmore for a period of time when Bill Graham was really just starting it.
Right.
And so I had some good times there. One of the few people that ever probably had to be carried out of the Fillmore by Bill Graham.
Tell me about the Filmworks. Tell me some of the bands you've seen. I mean, like you see guys like Moby Grape and the Dead, I mean, they were all playing there. That was the place. You had the West, you had the East.
Yeah, the Dead would play there. That and there was so actually Jefferson Airplane. This was in those days, right? Quicksilver Messenger Service.
Another great band.
Yeah, so had a bunch of those. Had the privilege of, Joe Cocker. First time I saw Joe Cocker, he got shown up and introduced him as a big friend of Leon Russell's. And holy smokes, what a night that was. But anyway, so actually, and just to give you a little spec on how technology has changed, we had all that psychedelic stuff going on in the video screen,
Yeah.
That was a film projector out there. And on top of the deal, we had a little jar of water to transport. Then we just poured colored oil on the top of it, and then we move it around with our fingers.
Right, that's awesome. Because I've seen the older ones. They got the little wheel that spins around that kind of gives those colors. But that's new.
Yeah,
that's
we had to use our fingers, so that was, so that makes me a high-tech person, right? So, but anyway, so we had some fun. Lee Michaels probably sticks out because I never heard anything as loud as Lee Michaels.
Right.
So I'm probably lost some hearing there for sure. So,
I have always been totally in love with that period of time in music, and the Fillmore West. I mean, the East had a lot of things going on too, which he started later, but the West was the original. And it was the standard, and I mean, I love seeing the old posters from those shows. The playbills were they're so collectible now. I mean, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for an original one.
Yeah, they were all very imaginative. But it wasn't like we went around collecting them. Savoy Brown was kind of one of my favorites of those days too. But and he's still around, kicking around. So
yeah.
But anyway, and then actually, I was reminded about that when somebody declared a pandemic a couple of years back, and I thought, wow, that was pretty terrifying. And then I heard somebody say, well, this could be as bad as the pandemic of '69. And I thought, pandemic of '69, I took my 3-year-old daughter with 300,000 of our very closest friends right to Altamont for the Stones and all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember anybody backing off because there was a pandemic going on. Right. So it's a perspective historically for all that stuff. But yeah, so Altamont was one of those things that you can remember. I've never had the desire to see the movie, but I remember the event.
Sure. Well, when you've been there, you don't need to see something talking about it because you've been there, done that. So who cares? So now you eventually ended up going to law school. Where did you go to law school at?
South Dakota, Vermilion, South Dakota, University of South Dakota. While I was in the service, I picked up some night classes. And when I was in Redwood City, I worked as a cost accountant for a large corporation and picked up a couple more classes there. And so I decided to go to law school and couldn't really afford it. But I figured, South Dakota, I don't think had any tuition at the time, and cost of living was pretty low, even by those standards.
Sure.
So I thought, once a resident, probably always a resident, and they let me come back to the state and go to school as a resident. So I got my degree in business administration, and then went on to law school there, and then was really headed back to the Bay Area, I thought. But I run across this place called the Black Hills, and I thought, damn, this is nice, and had a bunch of friends that we kind of hung out together, the Hole in the Sky gang, right?
Okay.
And so there's a mountain up here that's the tallest peak between the Rockies and Switzerland. And all the gold mining stuff had died. There was a mining town there that was vacant. And so several of us picked up cabins, little houses in Trojan, South Dakota, and decided that, well, we hang out there. So then I started practicing law in a town called Belfouche, right?
Sure. Yeah, they just had a hell of a hailstorm there, didn't they?
Oh, you watch the news too much. But yeah, you're right. So, and really that was, Belfouche was the largest cattle shipping point in the United States for, God, a long time.
Was it really? I
Yeah,
didn't
the
know.
cowboy movie with John Wayne, he refers to it as the cow town, right? But basically it was the place you could get across the Belfouche River, right?
Okay.
And Calamity Jane had a little place there on Saloon Street. And, the Butch Cassidy's Hole in the Wall gang did their first bank job at Belfouche. I happened to have the vault that was in the safe in the bank at the time. But I think they got $69.34. They made some real comedies about that because one of the guys really did get so drunk he fell off the horse as they were leaving. But anyway, it's just an interesting country if you're into Western history at all. Seth Bullock, and Teddy Roosevelt riding across the place where I lived, actually, just about. And the whole town, it was pretty cool. So I practiced law there for 28 years. And then I, somewhere along the line, I found out about these motorcycle things that were hanging around over here, and started monkeying around with the motorcycle business and motorcycle industry.
So you were doing so before the chip got going. Then what were you doing in the motorcycle industry?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
So were you doing stuff before you got the chip going? You were involved in the motorcycle industry then?
Nope. I had a wonderful Suzuki 400 and rode through the hills and rode through the Badlands every chance we had. So we did a lot of riding around, but they're really living here. Didn't know there was such a thing as a Sturgis motorcycle rally. I first heard about it, actually. I was visiting my brother in a town about 340 miles east of here. And he said I didn't even know he had a motorcycle. He said, yeah, he and some friends go out to the hills every year and ride around for a couple of days. And he didn't call it Sturgis or anything like that. Just come out here to ride around for a couple of days with some buddies.
Right.
And, so that was my first awareness of that. And then I come back one time. I'd been privileged to attend the National Bar Association in New York, and come back. A friend was giving me a ride from the airport, and we look over there, and there's a bunch of motorcycles, a couple dozen motorcycles in the hill, and somebody trying to get up the hill on a motorcycle. So, pulled over and stopped to see what's going on, and that didn't associate that with any big rally or Sturgis motorcycle rally or anything either. Just it was out by where the Jack Pine Gypsies still are. And, the remarkable thing about that was that I watched it long enough until Harley Davidson actually made it to the top of the hill. And that was a big cause for celebration because Harley hadn't apparently made it yet that day. Right. And so anyway, and then, a little later, probably 3 or 4 years later, Sturgis was in the process of trying to keep motorcycles out of town because there were just too many motorcyclists and they didn't like the way they behaved and, just didn't want them around. So they were just trying to get rid of them. And part of the way I worked my way through high school was by throwing keg parties. And I thought, we could really, if they didn't want them in town, we could just have a little party outside of town, right? And so that's really how I got started with that. We had other little things. I had a pizza ranch on it, or not a pizza ranch, that's a trade name, but had a little pizza shop and, that sort of thing. Did some other business stuff on the side of my law practice. But then it was just kind of a natural deal here. We'd go over here to Sturgis, look for some property, find a place where we might be out of town far enough so they couldn't object to it too much, and close enough so they could get to it, right? And just decided we'd throw a party and let people know about it. And when people go where they feel welcome. And so people started coming. We'd have a bonfire. Everybody's standing around the bonfire, telling stories, that kind of stuff, drinking beer.
Didn't you have a couple of guys or a few that came out and camped down? It was crashing out on your property.
We had
downtown.
We had people that decided they'd just sleep on the ground for a while, which is why one year, a lady named Anderson, who was she was in the county government somewhere issuing permits and stuff. We didn't have any permits, never thought to ask for any. And that's really not the way you throw keg parties, And so, and she started telling me, well, you need to do this and you need to do that, right? And people are staying out there, so you need to be a campground. So that's really where the campground thing came from.
Okay.
And, that's how simple things happen. And so since she was on my case, we had to become a campground. So then the next thing she said, well, now you need water out there. So then we, put in a couple wells and, just one thing after another. Every year it was something, right? So, but, now 41 years later, we kind of look for things ourselves, ways for improving grounds every year. But back then, really, we were just having our own little party. And so,
Right.
And just trying to get by.
So now, you alluded, it's 40, this is going to be 41 years. So, this past year, 2021 was 40 years of doing this. I mean, so quite historic in the context of things. So, but you kind of alluding with government and some of the situations you had, not some of it just not knowing, but some of it has been difficult. So back in 1994, I mean, there was a court case that was Buffalo Beer versus Meek County Commissioners. So tell me a little bit about that and kind of some of the history of, what you've had to, deal with at times trying to operate your business there.
Well, it wasn't too long after we started that city of Sturgis decided that maybe they'd made a mistake trying to drive bikers out of town, and that we were having too much fun out here and that they would like to have some of those bikers come back to town. And so there's a little bit more of an in-depth story there. But so then what happened was they had a little community gathering. And then when our liquor license came up for renewal, they just denied us our licenses. And so we worked without licenses for a few years until we kind of got that reversed. So, yeah. But we started off without licenses. So we just had a few years there where everything was free and we were not licensed. So, everything was free at that time. I thought we didn't need to have a license again. So it worked out all right. But, we survived it, largely because people enjoyed being here again. So
sure.
We never quit inviting people.
And then now you ran into a problem too with even being a campground, right?
I think there's something wrong with my computer maybe, but would you repeat that again?
Yeah, didn't you run into an issue with being even operating as a campground where you weren't able to charge admission or something?
We just did it that way.
Oh, okay.
Nobody told us we had to be free or we couldn't charge money. I just got upset and decided, well, hell with it then. We'll just make it free and just do it anyway. And so we got through it. So I don't remember that particular case because actually we've had more than one case.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been to court a few times. So we've been to the Supreme Court more than once. But we're here to have a party, by golly.
Well,
So
it's amazing. You've been to the Supreme Court more than once, and a lot of times, you can't even get a case to ever even get reviewed by the Supreme Court. So that's pretty amazing, right there.
well, it's not the U.S. Supreme Court, just the
I know
state.
it's been the state Supreme Court, but even there, it's not an easy task.
Well, yeah, maybe it's too easy because you have to have somebody on your case in the first place. So, the old saying, bikers have only two enemies, right? Rust and politicians. And politicians have caused us a lot more trouble than rust.
Sure, absolutely. So now you've been operating for 40. This is going to be the 41st year for the Buffalo Chip. You've become renowned as you're the biggest music festival in the Dakotas. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people realize that. But the campgrounds are very large. I mean, all the amenities are there. There's all kinds of guests that come in, just from the regular dusty biker on a chopper that shows up at road cross country to people coming in RVs worth a couple of $1 million. So what makes the Buffalo Chip so successful, being able to blend all those people? Because I've attended a number of times. I've been there, and I'm just amazed at the camaraderie and what your staff and what you're able to pull off.
You might think I'm just being hokey or something, but I tell people this. It's kind of like the musicians will come and the agents and the managers. I mean, we're legendary. We started off being legendary in the industry, and I never appreciated that. I mean, we were just here a couple of years, and we were getting busloads of musicians from Nashville that chipped in to rent a bus and come out here and just party and put on music, right? Hoyt Axton come along, Wolfman Jack come along. Those people just come because they wanted to be part of it. Sam Kinison. I mean, we just had a party, and the professional people would say, how can you have so many people here and never have any trouble? And I'd just say, it's just all nice people here, right? All these people here are motorcyclists, motorcycle enthusiasts, and they're here on vacation and they're making friends. And we really don't have any trouble. So, and we like to keep it that way.
Absolutely. So, of all the different people, you've had you've had legendary guests, from Steven Tyler and different, folks like this. Anybody stand out in your mind as far as, that you truly enjoyed having there?
There's probably only one artist that ever irritated me just because he wasn't here for the public, right?
Right.
All of our artists are here to do the best damn show that they can do. I believe sincerely that, and this comes from all of the feedback I get from the professionals in the industry and the artists themselves, they like it here. They love the audience. This is a unique place. And I tell everybody here, there's a certain magic about this place, this piece of dirt out here. There's just a certain magic out here that I don't understand it, don't know exactly what it is, but I know we don't want to screw it up. And so far, we haven't. People come here, they make friends, they have a good time, they go home, they take, they got their photographs, they have their memories, and then they come back and they bring people with them that hadn't been here before. And it's just a wonderful thing. It's kind of like it got to the point where all my friends were friends that I met because of this business, being in this little campground out in the middle of nowhere, right? And when I say nowhere, when we started, we could never get anybody to even figure out what South Dakota was or where it was. Couldn't get artists to come here because nobody had ever, it was just not on anybody's mind or anybody's circuit tour deal. And really over the years, that's changed. And, I like to think we probably had a pretty big part of that, because we brought in, lots of folks. I know when we had Kid Rock in 2004, he was still kind of at the beginning of his rock career, shortly after he crossed over and started doing the multi types of music. We had him out here, and there were so many people around. I mean, it was just so many people that traffic was jammed all the way into Sturgis, which was 4 miles at that time, and through town and out on I-90. And for a mile on I-90, traffic was jammed. And so I take credit for the government immediately building the longest exit on any interstate anywhere at Sturgis, exit number 32, westbound, because they didn't want to have traffic backed up again, and they wouldn't do anything else to alleviate traffic. So they just had to make a longer approach. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But that's kind of like the high point. So, all the artists that we have, they just wear their hearts out for the bands. I got two people that stick out like nobody else, and it's because of storms. And in 2005, we were doing a 13-episode television series, and Toby Keith was on stage, and the storm came in, and we were having a little meet and greet and just getting ready for the meet and greet. And Toby's there, and the first drop of rain hit his hat, and he looked at me and he said, "We got to get on stage," right? He went and got his band. They got on stage. It started raining cats and dogs, and they hung in there. He had Ford sponsorship, and they had half of a Ford F-150 hanging in the middle of the backdrop on the stage. The wind was blowing 40 to 60 miles an hour, blew pieces of that thing off, and they got soaking wet. We had it was the early days, 2005, we had a little internet antenna on one of the posts of the stage, and lightning struck and wiped that out. He played right through it, and when it was over, of course, it quit raining about 2 minutes after he was done, but he paid everybody in his band an extra $2,000 bonus for sticking with him during the storm, right? Kid Rock did that twice as well. And in 2013, about a little over a quarter of a mile up on the hill from the stage is our water tower, right? And it was 11:30 at night. We were shooting a live concert for country music television, and it was 11:30, raining cats and dogs. The crowd was right there. I mean, nobody even gets wet because they're packed together so tightly. Lightning struck that water tower, lit everybody up, and a photographer, Michael Lichter, had been on our Pee Wee Herman platform, I call it, and just clicking his shutter just the same millisecond that lightning struck that water tower, and it lit up the whole crowd. You can't see a shadow anyplace. I mean, it's just brilliant. And he played right on through it. And before that, there was an issue about the deal, and he's in the dressing room pacing and going kind of back and forth. And he says, I don't know who I'd stand in the rain for an hour and a half to wait and see, but I'm going to give him the best show I can. Right. And, those stick out, right? Like nobody else. So yeah, those two are saints in my book.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Now, last year, so Kid Rock played there, huge crowd. What was the size? What was the estimated size of that crowd?
Oh, there was a couple dozen at least.
I would say so.
Yeah, numbers are a funny game. So in 2004, I was telling you about this. The next morning, it was about 6 o'clock. There's a local radio station over here about a mile away, and KBHB. And at 6 o'clock in the morning on the news, the announcer's on there and said, "Hey, there was 260,000 people at the Buffalo Chip last night," right? And I think, how ridiculous that kind of a number is, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. But the really fun part was about 10 o'clock, he came on and make a correction, right? he said he had it on good authority. There was only 140,000 people at the Chip last night for that concert, right? And yeah, so numbers we never do numbers. So we had more than a couple dozen people there for sure. But we didn't have 260,000 people here ever.
No,
We've had
but I'll
millions
tell
here
you,
over the years, but not ever at once.
it was packed to the gills for that show. It was pretty amazing, and it was fun. So, people were, they were happy to get out from under that blanket of COVID, whatever you want to call it. So tell me, I mean, you, the governor, last year you had the governor as your guest at the Legends Ride. She rode in on her horse, she sold that great painting and everything else. But I want to talk about the fact that you, the governor, people of South Dakota stood up against, what they were trying to do to us. You were instrumental along with her in protecting, I feel like our civil liberties, our freedoms. So tell me about that.
I hadn't thought of it that way at the time, but, early on, I said, the only way we're not going to have this show and have people here is if they put National Guards at the gate and won't let people in, right? And then all of a sudden he became concerned whether or not that might really happen, right? Because
sure.
That's not supposed to be the way this country works. And so I just told everybody out loud, I mean, the city of Sturgis wanted to shut down the rally, and they were looking for excuses and looking for allies, and really some at the state were as well. And I talked with a legislator here just a couple of weeks ago who had been on a late night 4 a.m. Meeting with 26 of the other legislators talking about whether or not to try to talk the governor into or out of shutting the state down because everybody else was doing it. And it said, the Buffalo Chips already said they aren't going to shut down. So people are coming. So we might as well do it as well. And that's the same thing that the city of Sturgis said, well, the Buffalo Chip's going to do it anyway. So people are coming anyway. So we should be, and so it just kind of, it rolled from that. So it's kind of one of those cases where maybe one little person made a positive impact. That's a real possibility.
I think from everything and talking to people, I think it's more than a possibility. I think essentially your actions, your statements, you saved the rally, and you were saving. You were doing what you felt was right, and people all the time, are given a choice of doing the thing that's right. You did the thing that was right, and I think that you're going to be remembered very well for that, and should be. And in my heart, you will be. So. And I want to talk a little bit about the heart, because we talked about, you fighting for your rights, in court, you stood up to COVID and everything else. But I want to talk about something that I don't think you're the most comfortable person talking about, but I'd like to talk about it. And it's what you do to raise money and the charitable things that you do. I mean, in 2021, you raised a pretty outstanding amount. Now I have that in front of me, but I'd like you to tell people how much money you and the Buffalo Chip raised.
You know what? I don't really know. For years, we didn't keep track of it. It wasn't an issue. We have some different incidents, but all throughout, we met opposition. Not just to be in business, but we even had opposition for raising money for charities. And one of the as it turned out, one of the best things that happened was we were raising money for a children's home up in the Black Hills, and the home was mostly for Native American kids who were taken from abusive situations and didn't have foster care yet, so they were in this home, and so we're donating to that. And we did that for 2 or 3 years, and they decided. We announced that we were going to have Pee Wee Herman here, right?
Yes.
Which I thought was just going to be a hoot, right? He was coming
Absolutely.
in, we're going to do the world's biggest tequila dance, and have Pee Wee Herman doing a motorcycle thing and so on. And it was huge. But just because of that, they decided 3 weeks before the rally, they called us and told us that they wouldn't accept any donations from the bikers, and they wouldn't take any donations from the Buffalo Chip. And so we went shopping around for, some other deals. And that's where we ended up with the local Special Olympics, which was really an incredible organization. It was 100% volunteer. All the officers and people running the show were volunteering their own time and their own money and their own vehicles for the thing. And we started off with them. But I guess it goes way back. We built I think it was the third Habitat for Humanity house. And I say we, actually, it was people that come to the Chip that built the house. So during the rally, we built a house for Habitat for Humanity. And after the rally, we had a little trouble whether or not the city was going to let us place it in town, right? Crazy stuff like that. Just a raft of little things like that. So those are the things I remember about the charity stuff. Is you can't really do anything to please everybody, but there's a lot of organizations that are in need. And I tell you some of the things that we do, and I don't take any credit for it at all, but we do our freedom celebration every year. We started what amounts to we got 808 flags we put up out here in formation. Yep. We got a 50 by 80 foot flag that for years we flew up, because actually is one of the vets that had cancer pretty badly from the burn pits, and figured he wanted to have that flag flown in all 50 states. And we were the last one. He wanted to be at the rally, and he figured he only had a couple more months left to live, and turned out he was right. But so he gave me that flag, or I bought that flag from him, and with the condition that we'd fly it, right? So we flew that sucker for a long, long time. And this is our 32nd, I think, annual military, or it isn't a military tribute, it's a freedom celebration. And we got the 80% replica of the Vietnam Wall set up behind it. And really that, and then every year we pick some veterans that stand out for service that they did, saving some other people's lives, that sort of thing, sacrificing their own maybe or practically, and maybe different pieces of their body, protecting other people. And given those awards, just watching people see those 808 flags and walk through them, walk by the missing man tribute that's in the middle of the flags, going to the Vietnam Wall, seeing the names of somebody that they knew or one of their ancestors. It's pretty powerful stuff. So really more proud probably of that, if we have to be proud of something, but we've donated quite a bit of money, or the people that come here through events that we set up have donated quite a bit of money to different charities. And we'll do that again this year. We start off, I think, with, I don't even know just exactly how many things we do give to, much less how many dollars goes there. But things that stick out is like on Monday, we have the Legends Ride. Billy Lane will be there as one of our celebrities. Kevin Sorbo, who was, hugely famous when he was Hercules on television, had the #1 show in the world, I think, for 6 or 8 years. Some other folks. Tom Berenger's been here, who became a really good friend, worked there. Earl Dotson, Green Bay Packers, little Super Bowl ring wearer. And, it's amazing. You get to have lunch with somebody like Earl Dotson, for example. And, people are so interested, right? So respectful, but so interested. And Earl's one of those really humble guys, but, he'll tell you what happened, right? And it's kind of like Tom Berenger. You want to go all the way back to all those Vietnam movies, all that kind of stuff. he's been in so many movies, and he, you know, has worked with the biggest stars in the business, and you get a chance to have lunch with those guys and just ask them questions and the things that people are interested in. And then it's all for charity. So, you know, I just line stuff up like that, and people give money and we pass it along to the charities. And it works out pretty well. We, with the Special Olympics, for example, since they were all donating their time and their own money, and just needed more, I just asked them, I said, well, if we're going to give money to the charity, we've got to be able to, I don't want something just going to a general fund. I want our people to be able to see something that they accomplish by making these donations. So what is it you guys really need? What they needed was a bus because they didn't have any transportation for people. So we bought them a bus with the proceeds of the Legends ride, plus the insurance and the operating expenses and stuff. And then the next thing was they needed a gymnasium so that the kids would have some place to, you know, do some exercising, right? And just, you know, just do some kid things. And so there was a unusable gymnasium. It just needed restoration, new floor, that sort of thing, new ceiling, some lockers, dressing room, kind of, you know, so we did that. And so now we're in the process of lining up a softball field for them. So, you know, and yeah, in the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum Hall of Fame, we gave them enough money to eventually remodel and build on an addition and more than double the size of the place, right? So, you know, you can see where your money went. And when we do that, 100% of the money goes to the charities. So we don't funnel any of that off for ourselves either, as far as that goes. The donations are made straight for the charity. So it just makes life easy for us. And it's something we enjoy doing.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, those events that you're talking about, I've had the pleasure of being part of the veteran event and everything there, and being part of that. And that's pretty special. But the Legends ride's a lot of fun. And for people that don't know that, you guys kick it off. You kick that off in Deadwood. You know, the ride goes out through the Black Hills, but it's really the buildup. It's being able to, folks, like you said, could come have lunch with these different individuals and get to meet them and get a little personal with them, and then be able to go on a ride with them through the Black Hills, ending up there at the Buffalo Chip, having a little bit more fellowship time together, and then going on and seeing the show that night. I mean, that's a pretty special day. And I don't know of another ride in the country that really brings all those elements together like you and your team do there. That's pretty fantastic.
Well, it's a lot of fun, is what it is. I mean, you know, now you're making me think of some really fun instances, you know, because Steven Tyler missed the turn, right? And, you know, yeah. And Pee Wee Herman led the ride, but he was on a little bicycle with his helmet and all that kind of stuff, and come down. And, you know, we had 12 minutes live on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, still had it. And Funny or Die had come to the Chip and made something there too. And I tell you, Paul Rubens is just such a professional. It's really impressive. You know, you see people who really are professionals at their craft and it's art. It's really just super cool. And really the knowledge that these artists have, because they've researched the characters that they play, so they know all these little pieces of history. It's amazing. Some of the most intelligent people I've ever met, they just know so much, and it's all because they've studied for all these parts. I guess you don't really get an Academy Award without putting effort into it, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Kind of.
Yeah, I've so enjoyed the genuineness of the people that are there. And you talk about Tom Berenger; he's always very genuine, and you know, guys like Dee Snider. I think I was shocked the first time to sit down with Dee Snider and talk to him for a while. That guy's very sharp. He's a very intelligent guy.
You know, he's one of the 3 people who testified in Congress and for free speech, right? We need D back again. That's what it comes down to, because we are losing free speech rapidly.
Yeah, unfortunately, we very much are. We very much are. So now I was reading something, about something new that's going to be happening at the Chip this year. So I think you're teaming up with Easy Rider, a few other folks, Ride TV, and there's going to be, I understand, pay-per-view. So for folks that can't make it, so tell us about this.
Oh, Easy Rider was kind of like everybody's Bible, I think, for motorcycle stuff. I mean, when Joe picked up the name and made a magazine out of it about the same time the movie started, maybe a year later, it just picked up steam and it just became motorcycle. There are lots of other motorcycle magazines and stuff, but it just seemed to me like Easy Rider had a special magic there for a lot of years. And so it went defunct, and this gentleman named Ray Pelosi licensed it and promised to bring it back. And I think he's doing a pretty stellar job of it, as a matter of fact. And so part of the way he did that is he hired some of the original people that made the magazine great in the first place.
Like they call some people like that, yeah.
Yep. And so they're having a good time with this, and it's making it work. And then so one of them come up with the idea that maybe we should have a pay-per-view. The Ride TV fellow is pretty astute media person as well. And so they come out, looked around, and thought, well, we can do this. And, it's going to be up to them to how to make that work. But I think it's live streaming. And what they'll do is they'll do live streaming. They'll take film from all around the hills where people are riding, that sort of thing. And quite a little bit of activity that goes on out here. And then after the rally, anybody can stream on it, and they can look at the streams, as I understand it, for something like 2 or 3 weeks after the rally. And during that period of time, the editors will be working on making some television shows, one or more shows, out of all the footage that they're ringing out here, so that might put motorcycling back kind of in the mainstream for a while, because everything works in cycles, it seems like. And 15 years or so ago, there was a raft of motorcycles everywhere on TV, and that kind of went away, and it's real low. And I guess I got a sense of that when some of the television networks started looking for motorcycle content here about a year ago, thinking that it's time to maybe get back to paying some attention to those folks that like the freedom of the road.
Sure. So now,
excuse me, I should have turned that off and didn't. So I got it now.
So is there any particular things we should be looking forward to that we're going to see about the Chip and the activities there?
I was just looking at my computer before we started this deal, and there was an article there on my Google alerts that said, Sturgis Buffalo Chip announces 25 bands, 54 events, 10 bike shows, and I said, wait a minute, I gotta keep going. I didn't read it because I had to keep going, find out how I was going to make it to this thing without being late, because I'm notorious about getting involved in something and time goes by and I miss whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing. So is there anything special? I think there's a lot of things. We have been working our tail off, the crew that we have here, on making some improvements and stuff around here. The gun show, I think, is going to really stick out, right? And so we've got, I think, maybe 16 manufacturers of firearms and some manufacturers of ammunition, and they're going to set up over at the rifle range we have here at the Chip. And so then you're going to be able to go over there and look at some guns, for example, that haven't even hit the market yet, brand new products that are going to be coming out this year, or maybe they're just released here to start with. And I think they set 50,000 rounds of ammo aside for the folks from the Chip that wanted to go out and test fire some of these firearms, right? And so it's free admission.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just here to let people see their wares. So we're going to have, I don't know how many firearms out there, and ammunition, and I don't know just exactly what else, because really we the way the politics and the way that everything has gone, and we've been so doggone busy that just really didn't get it together until, a couple of days ago. And so about a week ago, the crew came out for the Ride TV, right? And looking around at how this was going to work and play out. And they thought, man, this is just perfect. It's going to be fantastic. And they, just went on talking about stuff that television people would know exactly what they were talking about, but not necessarily me. Then I got to telling them, yeah, that hill that we're going to be shooting into during the rally is going to be covered with sunflowers, and they're going to be all smiling at you as you're shooting at them, right? And so it's going to be, that's a big deal, I think, because I think, we wouldn't really have anything of the First Amendment or the rest of the amendments without the Second Amendment. And so we're just proud to have a gun fest here. So about what it is, I refer to it as a mini SHOT Show, right? If people have ever been to the SHOT Show in Las Vegas, it's one of the biggest things that goes on anywhere. And, so we've got a mini SHOT Show out here, and it's free. So everybody that wants to come out at the Chip, they can do it. Even if they're not here at the Chip, they can come out and see the firearms and talk with the people and try stuff out. Shoot.
So, talking about things that are free, I think sometimes people think, Buffalo Chip, it's pay to get in, that's the only thing you have there, but it's not. I like to mention to people, you've got the Crossroads area. That's where you hold all the bike shows. All right. There's some bars there. There's bike washes. There's you can get your motorcycle fixed by Fozzy, different people like that. You've got the Wall of Death. You've got all kinds of things that you put up there. You've got the Michael Lichter show. If you go around to the other side of the campground, that's also free once it opens up. And now you're adding the SHOT Show. So, I mean, for people that aren't staying or coming for the concert, there's still a lot to do and a reason to come out there, isn't there?
Mid-America Outdoors is doing off-road racing on the hill over at the Power Sports Complex. I think we're going to be restoring the hill climb probably next year, if not this year. But, they're coming out for the first year doing that. That'll be also live streaming and more television kind of stuff. And then there's just a number of really stupid stunt tricks, right, by motorcycle enthusiasts who just think this is a lot of fun, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then you got other people that want to raise money and have causes. Sean Ives, the Ives brothers, the Wall of Death, the Globe of Death. I mean, all those things that come around, and Sean had we hope beat a pretty serious cancer thing that he discovered while he was here 2 years ago, and so. We're just really happy that those things are happening. And, so just to be able to use those kind of skills, stunts, that entertainment for good again, it's a pretty cool deal. And again, there's no charge for that. And all the people here at the Chip, free admission over there for the off-road racing, which starts on Friday. We got the official kickoff of the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally on Friday night. Start off with a parade. We have a parade coming from a ride coming from Minneapolis, St. Paul, coming in, a stop at Mitchell for the pre-Sturgis rally there with Brian Clock and his organization, right? They're all coming and riding in here Friday, going to lead the parade down in the amphitheater. Then we're going to make a bunch of noise, and then we're going to follow that up with a couple of bands and close with Quiet Riot. Speaking of a bunch of noise, right? And so. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun this year. That's a fact.
That's incredible. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And so, for folks that want to be able to see more of what's going on, accommodations, camping, everything else, You can go to the Buffalo Chip website. It's very, very well built out website. You can find all the information you need about the Buffalo Chip, the events that are going on, the charitable organizations that Woody and his team's involved in. There's a plethora of information there. So I would encourage you there. If you're going out to Sturgis, check it out. There's a lot of stuff going on. You don't have to be staying at the Chip to enjoy the events that are going on there. So Woody, we do a little thing here. We like to ask each of our guests. We like to close the show by asking 3 questions. And I think we're to the point where, it's time to ask you 3 questions. And everybody gets the same questions. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your answers. I think they're going to be insightful and they're going to be interesting. So the first question I have for you, if you could go ride with anybody, past or present, who would you like to go ride with?
My son Damon. Peter Fonda used to run after the rally. He would ride down the east side of the Continental Divide to the Mexican border, then back up the west side. And so Damon and I took that ride 14, 15 years ago. Again, I suppose it might have been that long because Damon got married and had kids and all that kind of stuff since then. It's just time that we both took a little ride, right? And,
Sure.
What we did wrong was for us, but since we're starting, a little later, when we got to Glacier National Park and when we took a little detour and went through, Idaho and went down to the Lochshaw River, whatever, right? You get to that sign where it says that it's got the little curvy thing like this next 77 miles, right?
Right.
What you couldn't find a better ride anyplace, right? So instead of going to Glacier National Park at the end of the ride, we should start off at the first of the ride, because by the time we got there, we rode through inches of rain, which was a foot of snow by the time we got there, and they weren't going to plow the roads open. And so, we kind of cut back, went through Yellowstone, got snowed on there just ridiculously. I'd like to do that ride in reverse and not have the snow. So I think probably would be my favorite ride.
It's like starting the Appalachian Trail and hikes from the north going south, because you don't want to end it in the ice and the snow and everything else. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. So now you've ridden a lot of different things through the years. You've seen a lot of different bikes. But if you could have any bike, what motorcycle would Woody like to have?
I get kind of laughed at about that. I mean, my 99 Lowrider really is my favorite bike, and a number of people think that that's just not good enough for me. And then I inherited from one of my employees that I was given a bike to, a 2004 Fat Boy that I kind of souped up a little bit, and that's kind of my favorite ride for the moment. But Lloyd Greer and Tim Sutherland from Lloyd's Garage, who built a garage out here at the Chip, but also are so handy enough to have helped design the engine for Indian, I think, and the Victory motorcycle, and had the largest Victory dealership in the country, and doing okay with Indian as well. They just made a custom for me that I don't have yet. And I have a feeling I'm really going to like that one. And I'm thinking that I'm going to be riding that down to Durango right after the rally, because of Labor Day, there's the Four Corners rally.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I think I get to be the grand marshal for the parade for that thing. And I think I'll just ride in there on the bright, shiny new Indian that Lloyd made. It's something like 126 horsepower. I won't have any trouble passing anybody to get there.
No, you'll get there in quick order, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an upgrade. So I'm telling the truth in advance here. I think that's my favorite bike.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. So that's going to be fun. My last question for you: if you can go ride anywhere in the world, and maybe in some ways you already answered that, but you go ride anywhere in the world, where would you like to go ride?
I think I did already answer that. I haven't been around the rest of the world, and I'm having less and less desire to travel around Asia and different places that I might have had in the past. I love this country. I love the Rocky Mountains. I love the history out here. I mean, the Kit Carson Forest down in Colorado and New Mexico, wherever it is, some of the Aztec stuff down there. The roads are just so magnificent. You know, coming down the mountain into Silverton, Colorado. Yeah, you know, I mean, I love that kind of stuff well enough to do it more than once, you know?
Yeah.
And so, so I just think that route, you know, Continental Divide, down one way, up the other way, right? And there's just such a nice deal, and it's really cool to take some detours and maybe see Silver City, Montana, and some of those old West things that, you know, maybe aren't quite as ghost townish as one might think anymore. I mean, people are moving into those places again.
Well, look at Georgetown, Colorado, right there on 70. I mean, that's, you know, one of the best preserved towns in the West, and you know, Silver Spur's right next to it. That sounds fantastic, and a lot of people are moving into it because it's not that far from Denver, and it's got most of its original buildings. It's a cool town. And, you know, and you talk about Carson. I mean, there's a guy, you know, people don't realize, you know, there was a guy that was also, you know, scout, you know, Medal of Honor winner and everything else. You know, what a great life, you know, and deserves to have a forest named after him. He's buried right there, not too far out of Colorado, out of Denver, right?
So, you know, Robert's been listening. I think he thinks we're about done, so he just brought me a little refreshment for the end of the deal. So here's to you and everybody watching your show. We love everybody on a motorcycle, because really, when you're on a motorcycle and you run into other people on motorcycles, you just know you're talking to somebody who's going to help you, who's going to be friendly, who's a good person. I just really believe that. John Paul DeJoria put him into the Hall of Fame a few years ago. And I never heard a speech anywhere as elegant as the 2 or 3 minutes that he said just that, so much better than I just did. But, you know, that's true. When you're talking with bikers, you're talking with good people, and that's what our blessing is here.
Absolutely.
We had so many friends, like the old Elvis Presley song, right? I got neighbors, I got friends just about everywhere the rainbow ends. And then he should just say, and they have a motorcycle, right? So,
absolutely. So is Robert standing there?
No, I went back in the other room.
Okay. So Robert Pandia, so, you know, and now he's a great new member of the organization. So that's exciting news. So Woody, you know, this has been great. I hope everybody, and I believe they will, you know, walk away feeling like they know a little bit more about you and the Buffalo Chip and everything else. And sir, thank you so much for coming on with us. It was a wonderful time, and I hope everybody out there in Knuckle Buster world, you know, enjoyed this interview. Thank you, sir.
Here's to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye now.
Bye.